Yeah, and occasional. Yes, we have them in all the any public meetings. So, yeah.
Finished fourth all day, or third.
And I played with Dale, you know, the third game, 2 games.
Who was it?
Is that her dad, right? Cool. Yeah, it was a cool article.
My daughter
I like the picture
was in the
of
state championships with her that they referred
cool.
to.
The one
Market
that-
that's up in Alaska.
the one that I met.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It is cool.
Nice.
They
Very cool.
got a
Yep, no, I watched it all on TV, so.
He's a dog. I had to drive. I'm not smart
They
enough.
had, actually, or even the Orville game was at 9 o'clock in the morning, the first day was on that SWX, and I never really paid attention. I had a guy tell me that, so I never thought about it.
You gotta take a look.
Yeah, that was it.
It was yesterday.
Oh, it was yesterday.
And yesterday morning I opened it up.
Yeah, I read
said,
the whole article. It was so good. It was so cute the way they wrote the article.
Yeah.
About how she's used to herding
Yeah.
farm animals. Yeah, it was so cute. They did a really good job.
The one about the Smith girl?
Chandler, yeah.
Yeah, I read it already a few minutes ago. We got the on my
I hear
paper.
one up me all day long.
What happens? What you do when you retire? You got all these things to do. So I searched out that TV station, and it was. I mean, they do a really good job of. It ran all day long.
There's
You
something.
mean the local one in Wenatchee?
It's called SWX.
Oh, okay.
I think it's part of the KX2.
Because in Wenatchee they have something called Local Tel, and they do all the local
This
sports
was
and stuff on
this
it.
was in Spokane.
Oh,
The class, the 1B or 2B state playoffs. in
Okay.
Spokane.
Cool.
One of my daughter and Brewster's son is playing.
He's got a kid that's like, makes me look like a girl.
Your son?
Grandson.
Your grandson? Dang.
Yeah, he's almost 6'7". He weighs about
He bless him.
320 or so.
What's a refrigerator weigh? I mean, this guy's
3.
He goes like this. Rebounded. You know, guys just kind of. It's like a fly running into a windshield.
I don't know. He's his dad's pretty big. He's not that tall, but he's a big guy.
That's crazy gene pool. Dang, that's cool.
His brother,
What happens up here in Okanogan?
water, I guess. Coming out that's that Columbia River water.
It's a well water. I don't know. You guys are, I don't know.
No,
Not
he
like that
really.
down where I live.
Yeah, and I've got a 7-year-old granddaughter. The granddaughter that
How tall is she?
she's about 5'6".
I've been down watching her.
serious?
Yeah, I've been watching her play.
My 14-year-old is about to turn 15, and she has to like, to get to 5'1", and she's so mad about it.
So
Because she's
yeah,
really
no,
fast,
this gal,
and she wants to be faster.
she's not done growing either.
Oh no, not at 11.
Cameron,
Oh
she's
no.
going. She's still going.
She's in the middle of her growth. That's
She's
crazy.
into basketball too. She's
That's
loving
perfect.
it.
Anna, come sit here and we won't fight.
You look really official. You have to sit here. Make us look good.
I was gonna show you, where's those pictures? Oh, I'm working on you, Anna.
Who's the pro tem? You doing it today?
You.
No, you.
Which one? Am I still pro tem?
Here you go. Here he is.
There, for a couple more months. Huh?
I better stop it. I'm gonna stop play.
Ron, do you want to be chairman, Ron?
I will.
Okay. I don't have a gavel. I can find one.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. The members got the minutes via email. Do you have any comments regarding them? Somebody want to entertain a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
Motion's made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Okay, we have,
One change to the agenda.
Okay.
Well, not really, because there's no action items today. But Tim Ryerson was to be here to do a big presentation on Gebers, and he's going to delay until April. So we'll continue. We can probably continue all the way down to 1802 and 1901.
okay. I guess, we will proceed to Mark.
Oh, one quick thing. Did you guys see the last email thing on Paul Fontaine?
Yes,
On all
I
those
did.
signature issues that we don't need to do anything? Okay.
Just, yeah. I
Good.
mean, we can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
after- We'll go through this and
Okay.
then get to that.
Sounds good.
Okay. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, I brought, this is just a new version of the working draft, see if the board, to look at it and have any comments. I know one of the, this is not for action, this is just for discussion. Thank you. One of the questions that we've had is, concerns over the amount of CFS that would potentially be into the, or potentially out of the canal, and how that might affect other canal users. So this analysis drills down a little bit more into the exact CFS that is being proposed now for transfer versus the 33 CFS that were notified. And I wanted to introduce the Lundgrens. They're here today. They felt compelled to attend. They wanted to make an effort to introduce themselves to folks who are here and potentially answer a few questions about their water use and what their project is that they're doing here. They wanted to be here, and so here they are. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Don Lundgren. It's my wife, Chris. Lives in Winthrop. I've lived there since 1956 on my family farm, my dad's and mom's farm. We have been irrigating ever since 1956. In I think 71 or 72, Dad sold the Lower Ranch, which was a Meadow Valley Ranch, and he had separate water rights down there, and that went with them. He kept all of our water rights. He did keep one water right out of the canal company, just so he could be informed of what was going on and have a vote in it, okay? And that transferred to me through the partnership, okay? So, we, in 1990, installed our first pivot that we paid for out of our own pockets. There was no NRCS program at that time. We did it to save, conserve water and to be more efficient. At the time, there was salmon issues in the river, and so we thought we could send some more water down the river by not using as much. Plus, it was way more efficient to do that. Over the years since then, we did flood irrigate for 2 weeks every year, just so we wouldn't lose that extra water right that I know has to be used once every 5 years. And over those years, clear up until this year, we flood irrigated again for 2 weeks, and there's always been sufficient water in the ditch, and nobody said that there wasn't, and everybody downstream has always had enough water during that time that we did flood irrigate. Let's see. Yeah, so I just wanted to clear up that, and I do have statements from two of the people that work for me and my son saying that we did flood irrigate during those times, to prove that. And our intent was, when we put in the first pivot, was to install more pivots later, and then the NRCS program came in. And so we applied for that and got money for that, and then we installed the pivots ourselves to save money, because they wasn't 100% paid for to us. Approximately 20% is what we had to chip in to keep that going. So we've always been trying to work hard and keep it alive. My dad passed it on to us through a partnership agreement, and we want to pass that on through our children through another partnership agreement so they can continue farming and keep this valley green. It seems like we always have had plenty of water in the valley. I've never known a time where we've never not had enough water to irrigate. I want to tell folks that don't know, up until the river, I mean, they would swim between the horses' legs. So there's always been plenty of water. So at that point, Judge Volt ruled that the Indians could put the net all the way across the Columbia from that point on, I think I've seen 4 salmon in my entire life since then. And so that is, and there's no salmon in our river because they get all fished out before they get here, okay? Like I say, to keep the flooding of the water, to keep our other water rights after we did the pivots was a big concern for us, so we could eventually sell our water right, which is our water right, and so we can continue to farm. As everybody knows, it's real expensive to raise cattle and the profit margin's way low. So in order to do that, we had this plan in mind to conserve the water, send that down the Chewuck River so the fish could swim back up. And I'm just, you know, I don't know why there's so much concern, like we're trying to do something wrong here, but we're not. We're just trying to do something for our family and trying to send the water down the river for the fish. And that's been our plan the whole time, is to sell those extra water rights so we could continue farming, put that into improvements on the ranch. So with that, I'll let Mark take over.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
So I guess even though I run the ditch company, I was unaware that you've been flood irrigating for 2 weeks every year up until last year.
Wait a
or
minute, you're
whatever.
the president of the ditch company and you didn't know that?
I guess not. I guess not.
yeah.
Maybe Alan Parker in the back has a better memory. I'm not the one who walks the ditch. That's not my
I
job.
don't think Alan walked the ditch very often. He went around the whole ranch. He went through it
Okay.
every once in a while. There was I would have to call him and say, hey, there's a big plug up of trash in our ditch underneath the bridge. And he would come out. Very seldom I see him ever walk through the ranch.
The question I was going to ask was, how much water do you think you used when you flood irrigated?
A hell of a lot.
CFS, gallons per minute, however you want to quantify it, other than a hell of a lot.
Well,
We've calculated that,
That would
Roger.
be Mark's. He's got all that calculated
Okay,
and all
well,
the.
is this a new,
This is just a working draft, is all it is,
okay.
Roger. You
So
don't have
this
to
is a
look-
new draft from the one that,
Yes.
from
Yes.
December? Thank you.
So we've calculated that when Don was flood irrigating, he was using a 7.538 CFS of water, was the total requirement to flood irrigate his property.
Okay. I guess several things. One, being we're at maximum flow, what time of year did you usually do that flood irrigating? Beginning of season, middle of
Beginning of
season?
season.
You know, beginning of season, we don't have a lot of users. The ditch is probably running at half capacity. So this is a quarter capacity.
Beginning of the
ditch.
season in May, and I've been there since 1956.
It's always been full.
That ditch has been clear to the top as far as it can get every day that I know of, except for maybe when you turn it on the 15th of April to fill Pearson Lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it's down, we cannot irrigate because several years ago, the ditch company dug down past on the other side of the East Chewuck Road because they think they would get enough volume down there, and that lowered our one irrigation pump down 8 inches. And so if it doesn't keep it clear full, then we don't have enough to, you know, for that pump to suck water.
At the fish screen, since the fish screen's been put in, there's a digital readout that records, a reader recorder. It, I think, records either every 10. At the end of the download that, I have that spreadsheet.
Okay?
It isn't a consistent amount. But I guess what I'm trying to quantify.
I know it's consistent enough for me to irrigate when I know my pump's sucking water.
Okay, I guess the point I was getting at is if we're running, say we're running 20 CFS down the ditch, and you go from running a CFS and a half to 11.5, it seems like the water wouldn't get down
So
to
did
my
it ever
house.
get recorded that I was flood irrigating? That the water was being sucked down? Did it tell you that?
How it tells me that, the readout is up, so it's putting in the ditch.
Right.
What happens is, if, an example, if you turn all your pivots on one day after you've hayed and the ditch walker doesn't know, all of a sudden there isn't enough water to get everybody down to the lake, and the ditch walker goes up and opens up the head gate and increases the flow. It's a back and forth, you're always kind of dialing it up.
When I tell Steve, you know, he's asked me to call him and let me know if we're gonna be doing any, you know, major turn-offs or turn-ons, and I've tried to, you know,
Okay, so I guess
get a hold of him all
what
the
I'm
time.
getting at is, if you're contacting Steve for turning on or off pivots.
Not all
then
the
it's-
time, but
okay,
a lot
most of the time, then I would hope you would contact Steve if you were gonna be using 7.5 CFS to flood irrigate for 2 weeks. Or somebody would notice that.
Well,
But,
I used it, like you said, there's not a lot of usage downstream in the spring, so I did it in the spring. Didn't bother anybody downstream.
Why would you need to irrigate in the spring?
Pardon?
Why do you need to irrigate in the spring when everything's wet and green?
We have all different types of soils on our farm. Some is gravelly, some of it, the water you put it on there, it goes straight down through into the gravel. If I didn't extra flood irrigate on certain places on that thing, I would have a green spot here and a dry spot, you know, for 50 feet that way wide, and I wouldn't get any production out of it. So I've learned that some places require me to put extra water on.
So did you flood irrigate all of it, or just some places? 7.5 CFS is
I flooded
2,500 gallons a minute?
I flooded every field at different times. And that's a big place to flood irrigate every acreage at the same time and control it.
Okay, okay. Then you never used probably 7.5 CFS at one time. Because 7.5 CFS, the water duty, you say you got 10 under irrigation but with the Chewuck Canal. The water duty with ecology right now, I think they're calling it 4 gallons per acre per minute. Use round numbers of 5. That's 500 gallons. That's not 2,500 gallons.
Well,
And
Well,
We've, you know, the information that I've received from Mr. Lundgren, you know, we've put into our report, and I would encourage you to look at the report and.
to have it before the meeting. Thank you.
You know, I'm working with the board, Roger, you know, not obligated to provide you with any draft copies. I mean,
Okay.
I gave you a courtesy copy, I let you know that we're gonna be talking to the board, so I'm making an effort to work with you,
Okay.
but.
Thank you.
You know, I'm working with the board.
Okay.
I didn't do just one field at a time. I said I didn't do all of them at the same time. I did probably half of them at the same time, and sometimes, you know, I didn't keep records of what I did exactly, but I did use that, exercise my water rights, so I wouldn't lose them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have questions that, on the subject matter? I mean, the draft, we have another working draft now, but, of course, this is a public meeting, it'll all be made public, it'll be available to whoever might want a copy of it. So, go ahead.
So, so I'd encourage, you know, the board, you know, to look at the content, and then, if you have questions or concerns, let me know, and I can attempt to, you know, make parts of the report clear where you think there might be some more that might be lacking. There are not the signed declarations. I have signed statements from 3 individuals, and I don't have them in a declaration form at this time, but they will be filed with the final report. There'll be a you know, signed declarations to go with the 3 statements that were provided.
Well, it might be worthwhile for the board if those are in ahead of time a little bit, because, you know, with that, we need the ability to study these things and
Okay.
do stuff like that. I mean, we can't just, you know, have them come along with a final draft and expect to get a report of exam at the same time. I would think that we'd want to see those, you know, signed affidavits, or, you know, have to be credible.
Yeah, and that's and that's fine. We have time because we have to do the CEPA process still. So the goal was here to drill down into a CFS number that we felt was supportable by the facts. I believe we have that now. So now our intent will be to proceed with the the SEPA notice process with the county commission, the county planner. He'll be facilitating that. And so there'll be time to bring
Okay.
additional information to the board.
Okay, we have a couple other questions on the matter.
What's,
Go ahead.
what are the consequences of whatever it is you're trying to do for your client here? What are the consequences downstream, down the canal, I should say, for the rest of us? I'm the second to the last party, like 4 miles south of Winthrop. Will I have water if what you're trying to do is happens?
What Mr. Lundgren is attempting to do is to sell and transfer a portion of his water that he has perfected exclusively on his property. So it's water that I believe is factually pertinent to it, legally and factually pertinent to his property. So the water that he has used on his property does not in any way affect anybody else's use of water. So if his water gets transferred into trust through this change, the only water use that will decrease would be those quantities. So any other quantities that are being supplied by the canal, theoretically, they're still in the canal for use, because he's not transferring the water that you're using on your property. He's only transferring the water that's been perfected.
So there's no consequence whatsoever? I'll still have water? Is that what you're trying to say?
There would be less water potentially in the canal, but the water that is required for the other canal users theoretically should still be in the canal.
Can I speak on that? So, because our head structure is metered, because that's been documented, gets turned into ecology every year at that point, and the fish screen is sized for a certain amount. You know, we can take a maximum of 34 CFS out of the ditch. My understanding is, whatever you could perfect, whether it's 7.5, 13, or 33, the canal company will get a letter telling us to put that in the water bank in for trust, and the ditch company will cut back by that amount. Okay, so example, Donnie uses about a CFS and a
My name is
half.
not Donnie.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Lundgren.
Don is my name, but never been Donnie or Donald or anything like
Okay,
that.
I'm
so
sorry.
I don't know where you got your facts, but please
Okay.
don't call me Donnie.
Okay, Don uses about half the best of our calculations through his pivots. If he flood irrigates a day, 2 weeks a year, or whatever that I'm unaware of, and he gets 7.5 CFS in the water bank, at that point, if he uses a CFS and a half to continue to irrigate his farm, the canal company will be short 5 CFS for all of their other shareholders.
Okay.
And so that will affect Dave and everybody else
Let
in
me
this room.
respond to that, please.
Okay?
So we are not going to flood irrigate anymore after we sell these water rights.
If you were flood irrigating all season long, then there would be enough water in the canal and you cut back by that amount, there would be no deficit. But you haven't been flood irrigating all season long, and so that will cause a deficit in the
So let
rest
me
of
get
the
this
canal.
right. Doesn't the Chewuck Canal flow into Perigin Lake, and don't you have the head gates at Perigin Lake to transfer as much water as you need on down?
We have
Is
a
the
reservoir
Perigin
right in
Lake is a
Perigin Lake.
reservoir?
Yes,
Yes,
we
so
do.
the amount of water I don't use, if I'm not using it, that water's gonna flow into the Perigin Lake. You know, if I use 500 gallons a day or 2,500 gallons a day, I'm not gonna use it anymore. So all that's gonna flow into the Perigin Lake. You're gonna open up, there'll be plenty of water downstream for the very last person.
Okay, so if we don't all of a sudden get as much water to fill our pipe, how is it supposed to flow into Perigin and then come out of Perigin?
You said you were way down below
All of
by
a
the
sudden, they're gonna
airport.
dial down the head gate coming out of your property because we don't have that right. Perigin Lake by 15 feet in order to get our water. Do you feel good about
Perigin
that?
Lake starts filling up April 15th. They fill it up, they run that in there and fill it up to a certain point. When it gets to a certain point, they cut the water back because there's enough water in Perigin Lake at that point to transfer the water on downstream.
Roger, I'm not
You're
sure.
not gonna be short of any water, I guarantee you.
You're that necessarily the canal gate would be reduced. The canals company's claim is 55 CFS, and then they installed the gate on there, which reduced it to what, 34? 34. You know, I've looked at the file, Ecology's file on the canal company's right, and I know that there has been disagreement and discourse back and forth on whether that portion of the right between the 34 and the 55 has been relinquished. And as I understand from the file, there has not been a determination that amount is relinquished.
Well, like, I'm working under the premise of fish 20 years now and have not taken out more than 34 CFS. I consider that at this point our right. Out of that 34 CFS, we have been able to deliver water to all of our shareholders and to the Lundgren farm. That we weren't delivering 7 CFS to the Lundgren farm, or 7.5, but we have been able to deliver adequate water to the farm, as Don expressed. But it wasn't, 20% of the ditch, because we have a lot of, we have 183 shareholders. We have a lot of other water users. We have a lot of other farmers. And, I know that's not what Don's been using on his farm.
This might be something that we can look at. Technical assistance.
So you still have a right to use 54 CFS?
I believe he said that has not been determined.
Right.
Not that we still have a
There
right.
hasn't been a decision that there's been a relinquishment on the additional portion of the claim above 34, 35 CFS.
I'm sure, just maybe to step in here, I'm sure that will come out as we move forward with this. I mean, we will be finding that out. I mean, what effects this is gonna have on the overall, because, I mean, those are some of the things, I mean, we're basically dealing with paper water here. This is what we're dealing with.
Yep.
We're selling paper water for money. That's what he's doing. And so, regardless of what, maybe flood mitigate or not, it hasn't affected anybody up to this point. So if, in my opinion, I mean, we take 7.5 CFS away from what you have now, what you're using now, it will have an impact.
Yes.
If Ecology says, we're going to just arbitrarily allow 7.5 CFS to be sold downstream for whatever reason, it doesn't affect anybody else. I mean, I can't imagine this happening, but if they do, well, then it's not going to have any impact. But if it does, then I'm sure that it's going to be a big impact to everybody. If they reduce the 34 CFS by 7.5. I mean, that's why these people are here, basically. If they anticipate the canal company.
There was a reservoir at Peregrine Lake. Did you realize there was a reservoir at Peregrine Lake? And do you know how big Peregrine Lake is?
It really doesn't matter. It's beneficial use of water and what everybody has the right to use.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, you can store it. You have to convince Ecology that you can raise or lower the reservoir or whatever. I mean, if you are allowed 100 gallons a minute, you're putting 500 gallons a minute out there. Physical things that go on with how they're delivering the water really doesn't have anything to do with what the paper says.
Okay.
I mean, the paper is the rule, and if you're not abiding by, I mean, there's no marshal out there that's running around that tells everybody that they have to turn the water off or whatever. But this is what happens when, these kinds of things come about, is everybody has rights. And so the people is getting stepped on by someone else, and the law says what the paper is. So that's basically what we're trying to work out here with this change application, is what each individual person has the right to do. And I mean, I understand, you guys know the workings of your system up there a lot better than we do, and what the reservoir does, and that's all well and fine, but what's legally right to you and right transfer. So, you know, those are all things that will come out, and, I mean, we don't, maybe he has told you, we're not the final decision on this anyway, you know, I mean, it goes on to ecology, and they do all of the, you know, the mathematical stuff that has to be done, so. I think there was another, maybe, go ahead.
I was wondering if Mark knows, based on this sort of milestone or the material you just delivered to the board, if you know now what kind of schedule you're on for this process. Is there a way to estimate the next steps? You talked about the SEPA process, for example. Are there other, do you have sort of an end?
Well, I mean, it'll be done when it's done. I mean, there isn't a specific end date. We have to, now that I feel like we have a dependable CFS number, and we go through, there's a secret checklist that has to get published, there's a comment period that goes with that, and all that has to be a decision, so, you know.
Yeah, the SEPA process will start apparently now, I guess.
Is this not a draft then? Is this gonna be the final? Is that what I'm understanding, or is this yet a draft?
I haven't submitted a final here,
Okay.
so this is not being actioned on today, so,
I mean, if I understand it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody here, jump in, but these are the numbers he's gonna submit for SEPA. So if it gets published as, this is the draft, this draft working copy, it says 7 point whatever CFS is the SEPA, what's gonna be generated by SEPA, they won't be able to exceed that, or without going out and republishing and get comments again for another 30 days, is it, for SEPA? Yeah, whatever it is. Anyway, I mean, these are the numbers, you know, before, when this went out, it was the 200 whatever, you know, and I mean, that would have been, decided to drop. So now it's, and the SEPA publication goes out, then the comments will be generated on these numbers.
So it stays a draft until the SEPA has went through its process, or will he give you?
He won't be able to exceed any of the numbers on what he's doing without probably republishing, I would assume.
Okay.
I mean, this is gonna be probably, if they're gonna publish this as their SEPA document, it's not gonna be able to change up any from that.
Okay.
It may be able to go down some.
it sets the ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm right. But, and that, so that process is another, I mean, if it gets published this week, that would be another 30 days minimum before the SEPA process is done. Then it comes to us, and we'll take as long as we want with it. So,
And you know, there are, you know, the Lundgrens want this to be done as soon as possible,
I'm
so do the
assuming
buyers. So I mean, my intent is to get it done as soon as possible. There are applications that are on the board's agenda that were filed in 2013 that are still on the board's agenda. So I don't want that to be how this application goes, but sometimes they do languish.
okay, is there any other, I think we have one over here.
Yeah, I'd just like to understand the opportunities we have for review and comment. The last one that was submitted, we at least got it the day before to look at. And there were a lot of technical problems with that. I'm an agricultural engineer with a lot of experience in irrigation, drainage, and fish screening. And I could have a lot of problems. Is the leakage claim still part of this?
Yes, yeah, the canal losses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said it was all now from on-farm use.
There's an off-farm component.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, documents are not gonna pick up problems. So I'm just curious, this would all be so much easier and better if we got a chance to see these things and point out what we consider to be problems. You know, instead of just arriving here.
We're not at the end, and like I have said before, you still have, I mean, once our decision is made, it goes to ecology and it goes out for comments when they're working on it for another up to 45, I think at least 30 days. So I mean, it goes out on the website for the whole world to see, and anybody that has a comment can comment back to ecology while it's being published there, even after our decision.
Is that the SEPA or is it just?
No, this will be this.
Okay.
I mean, even after if the board renders a positive decision on this and it goes on to ecology, then it sits on there, and then they publish it onto their website, and it stays for public comment for another 30 days. Actually, they have 45 days, I believe, to work on it, and before they render their final decision. So, I mean, there's still more time to comment on while they're working on it.
So at this point, I guess I'm wondering, is it better just to wait till this goes to ecology and then let them know what the serious technical problems are? Because coming back over and over again and getting this kind of drip of, you know, other stuff is.
Just let me say that we have just got this. We haven't even had time to look at it. I don't think the board as a group have decided what we're even gonna do yet. I mean, we could remand it back. So, I mean, we haven't even had time to study it, so we just got it. So we need time to go over it ourselves individually before we decide our decision on what we're gonna do with it. So, go ahead.
My name's Jerry Heller, and I'm a irrigator, member of the Chewuck Canal Company, stockholder. My question is, why is it that there isn't a final document presented to you, a final proposal presented to you by the proponent before the secret process starts? This has been something that has come on with a draft, and come on with another draft, and come on with another draft. I was at a meeting when when we started up down in the little commission hall down here, when you were told that our representative, the attorney for the association, would get a copy a week ahead of time, and that didn't happen. And so now there's another draft presented, a request from these folks before we go through the secret process, before we start going all that other process. It seems like these people ought to be required to bring it together to what they want and then start the rest of the process. And that should be done fairly quickly because this has been hanging around for a long time. And we've got a lot of people who are interested in this, who are driving 80 miles round trip once a month to come to these meetings to see what's happening, which is really not fair to all those folks. And so why is it that we take what characterizes the draft and say, we're going to go to CEPA with it? Why don't we wait and say, you folks, get your proposal in here, and then we'll go with it from there. We'll have a chance to comment.
Just to answer your question about you having to drive, I drive 100 miles to come down here and listen to you guys complain to me, and I don't get anything either.
Right.
So, I mean, and I come every month.
So do we.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, if you want to come to the meeting,
I'm not asking for any sympathy. I'm just thinking it would be better for all of us.
this is how the process works.
You included that the board could say, we need the final document
Okay,
from the proponent.
we'll take that under advisement. I mean, all I can answer to you, and maybe what some of the other board members might answer you, but this is how the process works. I mean, we don't necessarily have it all up front. They have the opportunity, if they want to go out to CEPA with something and it gets kicked back, then they pay $400 or $500 publication fees, then they have to do it again and again and again, not knowing how the board's going to react to it. So, I mean, they're doing the process the way it's to be done. So, we can't change how the process works. So, if that answers your question, otherwise that's kind of the best. Maybe one of the other board members want to jump in here. That's all I know about it. You good? Anybody else? Yes.
We've been talking numbers here, and there's one number that no one seems to have mentioned so far, and that's the canal has an agreement with ecology that when the river itself reaches 100 CFS, the canal turns its drawdown by 10 CFS. So if you take 7 off of the 34, or 7.5, that takes it down to 26.5. And then the river drops below 100 CFS. The canal company is required to turn down to 16.5 CFS. 16.5 CFS in that ditch won't feed Mr. Lundgren's needs, let alone those downstream. That's just the simple.
Alan Parker, he's a ditch walker for 15 years or something on the canal, so.
That all has to be taken into account, I would assume, when this thing is done. I mean, I haven't read it, so I can't answer any of your questions. So ecology, I'm sure, will know that. All the comments are going to be attached to this when it goes in. And when the evaluation comes to a final head, then that'll all be taken into consideration. Anybody else?
I'd like to say something real quick, not to preclude his comment, but I did do the site visitation, and I'm not claiming to have any position in this yet, because I'm still reading and learning and listening, but I did see his method of flood irrigating. I just wanted to bring that up, that I did physically see it on the day and the time I was there, that the channels of water did meet and spread across the fields, at least on the part that I saw. Just wanted to tell you, I did witness that.
Okay.
I was
Real quick,
just-
we need to move on.
Just curious, as a shareholder in the Chewuck ditch, do my rights, are they as important as Lundgren's rights to the water, or is whatever once this determination is made, what we get?
You know, I don't know that any of the board members here know anything about the bylaws of the ditch and how it operates. I mean, we don't know that. All we know is what the water right, what's been submitted to us to look at and how the water right works. As far as the workings of it, how the bylaws and how the district operates, we have no clue how that works.
And then the Lundgrens have a separate private water right that is conveyed through the canal. But it is their own private water right, separate, distinct from the canal company's water right. And they have a 1907 and a 1889 water right, which are senior to the canal company's water rights. What the canal company has, I believe it's a 1910 water claim. So they have these senior water rights.
So do we have, we get what's left over after the determination is made? That's my question.
As a junior water right holder, senior water right holder has the right to exercise their right to the full extent before junior water right holders are satisfied.
So, chance that would it be ecology, or would grant enough to make up the difference to us? I mean, are the fish more important than like 200 families whose land has no value without their water?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's about how the law works, and
How many acres do you use for agricultural use, irrigate?
20.
And what do you raise on?
It's dry right now.
Why? You haven't used your water?
No, I've been using it.
Then why is it dry?
Because I was doing rye to combat my weed problem.
Okay.
But I have the ability to divide my land and sell it, and if my land has no irrigation, I'm screwed,
Okay, let's,
Comment on that?
we want to move on here real quick, and, because we have some other stuff to get on here.
According to the Chewuck, because the Lundgren farm did not file in that open window in the mid-70s when the Chewuck refiled to establish their 1910 date, the Lundgrens filed in the late 90s, which gives them a junior water right not only to the Chewuck, but to the endangered species in stream flow. And I guess that will come out in this also, but to answer your question, I think they have a junior water right to the canal, and so they cannot impact.
Okay, one other question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Lundgren, Richard Watson here. I'm one of the few people that actually has a commercial venture. I have an venture on the Chewuck Canal, and if we lose our water rights, we're going to lose our orchard. So I'm just asking Mr. Lundgren, are we going to have enough water to water our orchard?
Yeah, you will.
I will.
How many years have you seen the ditch low? How many years have there not been enough water go down the ditch to fill everybody's needs? How many years does it snow every winter? How many feet of snow do we have? What's our snowpack every winter on an average? Every year. We have not ever had any dry moments below.
What concerns me is if you sell off your water rights, is that flow going to continue? And can I grow my orchard?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
It's good to hear.
Okay,
Thank you.
you know, we're kind of getting off the subject. You know, we appreciate everybody's comments, and, you know, most of you have been here in prior meetings. I mean, the board is gonna work as diligent as we can to make sure that everybody's aware of what goes on, that there's nothing that's, you know, the transparency is very important, and again, we don't have the final say. This is all done according to law, because it can, even if the ecology denies it, then it can get appealed, and it can go on up higher, and it can keep on going to the Supreme Court for that matter, I mean, if it goes that far. So, we're not, you know, we're not gonna do anything that we're not authorized by ecology to do. I mean, it just won't happen. And, anyway, we appreciate you coming. We got another, right to speak of here, and I know our assistant needs to get back to Wenatchee before the snow gets too bad, so we want to try to cut it as short as we can. We appreciate you for, Dawn and Mrs. Lundgren for coming today, and all the other audience members as well. Thank you.